Hey babes, I hope you're well. So I'm filming this the same day as my last video. I hope you've been coping okay. I wanted to talk about how we need a new name for BPD. I always call my BPD BPD because it's so quick, it's so well known, it's the most talked about, it's the most well known of the titles for this. So when I was diagnosed at 17, which is a bit unusual because you're meant to be over 18, I was at CAMS, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, but I didn't want to go on to adult services, so I was turning 18 the last day of my therapy session, so I think I was like nearly 18. Anyway, it doesn't matter. When I was diagnosed with something called emotional intensity disorder, and I was like, what is that? I had to Google it to check it was BPD because I was for months before doing DBT therapy, which is the treatment for BPD. But because I was diagnosed with something called emotional intensity disorder, I didn't know that that was the same thing as BPD, so I had to Google it to make sure it is the same thing. Now, the NHS prefer the term emotional intensity disorder because they believe it's less stigmatized than borderline personality disorder, and I have to agree. There's another term for BPD, which I'll go into later, but it's a bit controversial. It kind of makes me laugh. So BPD stands for borderline personality disorder, as we all know. But what does borderline even mean? Borderline was a term kind of coined around the 80s, which at first people thought BPD was bordering between neurosis and psychosis. And now that's been debunked. It's not really like that anymore. Although a lot of us experience psychosis, it doesn't really fit very well. Borderline between neurosis and psychosis. That's where that iconic scene came in with Susanna Kaysen in Girl Interrupted. Borderline between what and what? But it's quite a dated term, and I think the fact that we're in cluster B and we're clustered and grouped together with narcissistic personality and antisocial personality disorder is, I don't think, very fair in my opinion. First of all, BPD is not a problem with your personality. People like to make jokes in the BPD community when people say, hey, I like your personality, and then they say, thanks, it's a disorder. I don't really think BPD is a problem with your character. I believe it's literally just an emotional dysregulation problem, and for me personally, I think the NHS is doing bits with the term emotional intensity disorder because it sums it up. With BPD, you don't really know what it means. You're like, what is that? Is that the same as bipolar? BPD gets very confused with bipolar because they sound similar. So yeah, emotional intensity disorder makes sense. BPD is just more, like universally known, and it's been used for decades now, so people have, I think, a deeper understanding, even though it's a bit confusing. But I think BPD is somehow better than EUPD, emotionally unstable personality disorder. Now this is a controversial one. It's funny because it's kind of true, but it's offensive at the same time. We know our emotions can be unstable, which leads us to things like eating disorders, depression, anxiety, drug addiction, reckless money spending, binge eating. Emotionally unstable personality disorder sounds dangerous, it just sounds a bit scary, and we're not scary, so even though it's true we have unstable emotions, again, it's just like, it doesn't sound nice, so no one uses the term emotional unstable personality disorder, but that's one that actually exists. I made up my own name for BPD, but it's not real, so we can't use it, but I really like it. I think emotional dysregulation disorder is perfect. Emotional dysregulation just means we have trouble regulating our emotions. The word personality isn't in there because it's not a personality defect, so I think it should be named emotional dysregulation disorder because that makes so much sense to me. Like, I know it's a made-up name, so I can't use it, but the whole thing with DBT therapy is helping us regulate our emotions and coping with our, let's call them wonky emotions. It has a ring to it. But as I've said in previous videos, like, I'm gonna keep using BPD because it's well known, even though I don't think it makes any sense and it's outdated. For now, it's fine. It's not in the DSM-5, so it's not a thing. I can only dream. I just wanted to say that I googled different names for BPD and a list of like 7 came up, which some of them I haven't heard. So basically some clinicians and BPD patients provided some made up names, which I find really interesting. One of them's emotional regulation disorder, which is literally what I said. I'm so happy someone else thought of that. Emotional dysregulation disorder. That's exactly what I said. Hope that comes true. Emotional intensity disorder, which is a real one. Emotionally unstable personality disorder, which we don't like. Impulsive personality disorder, which I don't think does it for me. Impulsive emotional dysregulation disorder, fair enough. And emotionally impulsive personality disorder, which is like kind of weird, but yeah, emotional dysregulation disorder is actually being used by a few clinicians, and like that actually makes me happy because I feel like I just thought of that by myself, but it's a thing and that's kind of cool. But also apparently in the DSM-5 they proposed the name borderline type, which is so, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I guess it's better than BPD, but which one would you recommend? That's what I'd like to know. If you have any ideas on what BPD should be renamed, I'd love to hear it. But for now, BPD's fine. But also emotional intensity disorder, I do like that one as well. I think that's fine. Have a good week. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video.